Silence is strength, not weakness. But how often do we truly understand this? In our fast-paced world, where everyone wants to be heard, where everyone is rushing to prove their point, where every argument feels like a battlefield for pride, the one who stays silent often appears to be the loser. We look at the person who walks away and say, he had nothing to say. But maybe, just maybe, he had everything to say. He just didn't waste his peace trying to explain it to someone who wasn't ready to listen. Silence, my friends, is not the voice of defeat. It is the language of power. It's easy to react when someone provokes you, when someone mocks you, or when someone misjudges you. But it takes real strength to stay composed, to smile gently, and to walk away without letting anger poison your mind. When you speak in anger, your words belong to your emotion. But when you stay silent, your silence belongs to your wisdom. Let's take a simple example from daily life. Imagine you're at work. You've worked hard on a project for weeks, staying late, skipping breaks, giving it your best. During the final meeting, your colleague criticizes your work publicly, perhaps even unfairly. You feel that heat rise in your chest. Your mind wants to defend, to attack, to prove. But in that moment, you remember silence is strength. You take a deep breath, smile slightly, and simply say, "Thank you for your feedback." The room goes silent. The colleague who wanted to provoke you feels unsettled because you didn't give them what they wanted, a reaction. You gave them what they didn't expect, composure. That silence spoke louder than any argument could. Later, people remember not what your colleague said, but how gracefully you handled it. That's the power of silence. It transforms moments of potential chaos into moments of quiet dignity. It doesn't just protect your peace, it also earns you respect. Think of relationships. Every couple has disagreements, misunderstandings, small moments where words fly faster than thought. In those moments, we often say things we regret later. Have you ever noticed that when both people shout, no one listens? But when one person stays calm and silent, something magical happens. The energy of the conversation changes. The silence begins to heal what words have broken. There's a story of a husband and wife who argued every evening. One day, after a particularly heated moment, the husband decided to stop responding in anger. The next time his wife raised her voice, he listened silently, nodded, and simply said, "I understand how you feel." At first, she grew even angrier, thinking he didn't care. But as days passed, his calmness began to soften her tone. That silence became a bridge of understanding, because silence has a healing quality that words sometimes cannot reach. In our modern world, people think talking is power, but talking is easy. Staying silent, that's hard. When you stay silent, you learn to listen deeply to others and to yourself. Silence helps you understand your emotions before they control you. It gives you time to reflect before you respond. It's like a pause between lightning and thunder, small but powerful enough to change everything. You know, life often tests us through people. Someone might cut you off in traffic, insult you online, or gossip behind your back, and your mind says, "I have to reply. I have to show them who I am." But here's the truth. You never have to prove your strength to anyone. Strength that has to be proven is insecurity in disguise. Real strength shines quietly, like a mountain, solid, still and unmoved by the storm around it. There's an old saying, don't wrestle with pigs. You both get dirty, and the pig enjoys it. When you argue with small minds, you lower yourself to their level. Silence keeps you above it. Silence is your invisible armor. It protects your dignity while the noise around you destroys itself. Look at nature. The ocean doesn't respond to the storm, it simply absorbs it. The tree doesn't shout at the wind, it bends and waits for peace to return. Silence is not passive, it is profoundly active. It listens, it observes, it transforms. Many great leaders understood this. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, often practiced silence for days. He believed that silence connects you with your inner truth. When the world outside becomes too loud, silence becomes the voice of clarity inside you. Even in spirituality, silence is sacred. In meditation, we discover that silence is not empty, it is full of wisdom. It's in silence that our hearts speak. It's in silence that the soul breathes. In daily life, silence can save relationships, careers, and even your mental health. Not every action deserves your reaction. Not every insult needs your attention. Not every battle requires your sword. Sometimes, silence is your shield, protecting your peace, your focus, and your happiness. When you learn to be silent in moments of chaos, you discover your real power. You begin to realize that peace is not found in control, but in surrender. Silence teaches you that you don't need to shout to be strong, and you don't need to fight to win. So the next time someone tries to pull you into negativity, remember, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Just smile, stay calm, walk away if you must, because your silence will say everything that needs to be said. Silence is strength, not weakness. It's not about giving up, it's about rising above. It's not about losing, it's about choosing peace over pride. The world may misunderstand your silence today, but tomorrow they will admire your strength. And that, my friends, is the kind of victory that doesn't need applause. It just needs a quiet smile and a peaceful heart. Don't accept others' insults. Return them with silence. These words sound simple, but they carry the wisdom of centuries. Because the truth is, no one can make you feel small unless you hand them the permission to do so. When people insult you, they are not showing your character, they are revealing their own. Their words are a mirror reflecting their pain, not your worth. Yet most of us, without realizing it, accept those insults as if they belong to us. We take them to heart, we think about them for hours, sometimes even days, and we allow someone else's temporary anger to disturb our permanent peace. That's where we lose our power. Let me tell you something, in life, people will throw words at you the way others throw stones. You can't stop them from throwing, but you can decide whether to pick those stones up or walk away from them. Every time you accept someone's insult, you are carrying a burden that was never meant for you. But when you choose silence, when you refuse to react, you are saying, "This does not belong to me." That's not weakness, that's emotional mastery. Imagine this, you're at school, at work, or even at a family gathering. Someone makes a sarcastic comment about you, your appearance, your success, or your decisions. Everyone looks at you expecting you to fire back, but you don't. You smile, maybe even nod, and move on. In that moment, silence becomes your shield. The one who insulted you expected a fight. Instead, they received your calm, and that calmness unsettles them more than any angry reply could. Because people who insult others crave one thing: reaction. When you don't give them that, they lose control. Your silence takes away their power. Think of social media, the modern battlefield of words. People criticize, mock, and judge with just a few taps of their fingers. They hide behind screens and throw their opinions at you. But here's the truth: what people say about you is none of your business if it's not true. Their opinion doesn't define your reality. You don't have to fight every comment or defend yourself in every argument. Your worth doesn't need validation from strangers. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Your silence will speak louder in time. There's a beautiful story about a wise man who was insulted by another person in a crowded market. The man shouted at him, used harsh words, even tried to humiliate him publicly. But the wise man stood there silently, calm and composed. After a few minutes, the man grew tired and left. The crowd asked the wise man, "Why didn't you say anything?" He smiled and replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, who does the gift belong to?" They said, "It remains with the giver." He nodded and said, "So does an insult." That is the wisdom we all need today. In your daily life, you might face people who try to put you down, maybe a jealous coworker, an insecure friend, or even a frustrated relative. Instead of reacting emotionally, try seeing their behavior for what it truly is: a reflection of their inner conflict. People who are at peace with themselves don't insult others. Only hurt people hurt people. Only the insecure try to make others feel small. When you understand that, you'll stop taking their words personally. You'll stop carrying their pain as your own. Every time someone insults you, you are being given a test, not of your intelligence, but of your emotional maturity. Will you let their words control your peace, or will you rise above them? Choosing silence doesn't mean you're letting them win. It means you're wise enough to see that there's nothing to win in an argument with someone whose goal is to hurt, not understand. Silence is your quiet declaration that your peace is more valuable than their approval. Take the example of the sun. Every day, clouds cover it, storms try to dim its light. But does the sun stop shining? Never. It doesn't argue with the storm. It simply waits, knowing that clouds pass and light always returns. Be like the sun, consistent in your peace, regardless of the noise around you. You might think, "But won't silence make people think I'm weak?" The truth is, silence often confuses those who expect drama. They mistake your calmness for defeat because they can't imagine strength without noise. But over time, they'll see that your silence was not surrender, it was discipline. The loudest person in the room is not the strongest, the calmest one is. There's a simple test you can try. The next time someone says something hurtful, instead of replying, pause. Take a deep breath and look at them. You'll notice something interesting. Your silence will make them uncomfortable, because silence holds a mirror to people. When there's no argument to distract them, they start hearing their own words echo back. That's when realization begins. You didn't have to say a single thing. Your silence did the teaching. Life becomes lighter when you stop picking up every insult that's thrown your way. You realize that peace is not found by changing others, but by mastering yourself. You cannot control how people treat you, but you can always control how you respond. And sometimes the best response is no response. So, the next time someone tries to bring you down, remember this. Their words are like arrows shot into the air. If you don't stand in their path, they'll fall harmlessly to the ground. Let them talk, let them shout, let them try. You stay calm, you stay kind, you stay silent. Because your silence is not empty, it's full of confidence, self-respect, and power. When you don't accept their insult, you show that you are above it. You show that their words cannot touch your peace. You show that you are stronger than the storm they carry inside. And that is true power, the kind that doesn't need to be proven, the kind that shines quietly. Because silence, when used with grace, becomes the loudest statement you can ever make. Ego thrives on attention, silence starves it. Those 8 words hold a secret that can transform your relationships, your peace, and your ego is like a fire. It needs constant fuel to keep burning. That fuel is attention, reaction. The more you feed it, the more it grows. But the moment you stop reacting, the fire begins to fade. Silence, in this sense, is water. It cools the heat of ego and restores peace to the heart. Think about this. How often do arguments spiral out of control because both people want to be right? It's not about truth anymore. It's about ego. One person raises their voice, the other feels attacked and shouts louder. Words become weapons, and love gets lost in the noise. But if one person simply stays silent, takes a breath, and refuses to add more fire, the argument dies on its own. That's not weakness, that's mastery, because ego cannot survive without an audience. We see this everywhere, in families, in workplaces, even on social media. Someone posts a comment just to provoke you. Maybe they say something harsh, something unfair. They want to pull you into a debate, not to learn, but to win. The ego always wants to win, even when it's wrong. The moment you reply, the moment you argue, you have already given your peace away. But when you stay silent, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, you take away their power. Their ego starves because it cannot feed on your reaction. Imagine a situation at work. A colleague is jealous of your progress. One day, they make a sarcastic remark in front of others. You got that project just because you're the boss's favorite. Everyone looks at you, waiting to see how you'll respond. You could defend yourself, argue, or even insult them back. But instead, you smile and say nothing. You continue doing your work calmly. Later, that colleague feels uneasy because they didn't get what they wanted, your reaction. The fire of their ego finds no fuel, and slowly it dies out. A few days later, people start noticing your calmness, your professionalism. You didn't prove yourself with words. Your silence proved everything. Ego is a strange thing. It always wants to be noticed, respected, and praised. And when it's not, it starts to panic. That's why some people criticize others. It's their ego's way of saying, notice me, validate me, respond to me. But when you refuse to give that attention, when you respond with silence, the ego feels invisible. And nothing hurts the ego more than being ignored. We live in a time when everyone wants to have the last word, the loudest voice, but the final say. But the truth is, Peace belongs to those who can walk away without saying a thing. Because silence doesn't mean you're avoiding the truth. It means you're not interested in wasting energy where it won't be valued. You know who you are. You don't need to prove it to anyone. There's a story about a saint who was once insulted by a young man. The young man shouted, "You're a fraud! You act wise, but you know nothing." The saint smiled gently and said nothing. The young man kept shouting, trying to get a reaction, but the saint remained peaceful. After a while, the young man grew tired and left. The saint's disciple asked, "Guruji, why didn't you reply to him?" The saint said, "If he wanted to give me his anger and I didn't accept it, who is left holding it?" The disciple smiled. That's the wisdom of silence. It leaves the ego with nothing to feed on. In our own lives, ego shows up not just in others, but also in ourselves. Sometimes we want to be right so badly that we forget to be kind. We argue not because we care about the truth, but because our ego cannot handle being wrong. In those moments, silence is not just a response to others, it's a lesson for ourselves. It's a way of telling your ego, you don't need to win every battle, you just need to stay peaceful. Think about relationships between friends, partners, or family. So many break not because of big mistakes, but because of small egos. Someone says something hurtful, the other reacts, and soon love gets buried under pride. If one person had chosen silence in that heated moment, things could have been different. Silence doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means choosing the right time and way to express them. When emotions are high, silence is wisdom. When peace returns, then words can heal. In today's noisy world, silence has become rare, and that's why it's powerful. It's not the silence of fear or avoidance, it's the silence of strength. When someone's ego tries to provoke you and you stay silent, you're saying, "I am not at your level. I will not let your noise disturb my peace." That's what real maturity looks like. Not shouting louder, but staying calmer. There's a beautiful example in nature. Look at the mountain. No matter how strong the wind blows, the mountain stands firm, unmoved, silent. The wind makes noise, but the mountain remains majestic. That's how we must be when ego storms around us. Silent, grounded, steady. The wind will pass, your peace will remain. Remember, silence is not empty. It's full of answers. It's full of strength. It's full of power. When you stay silent in the face of ego, you're not avoiding confrontation. You're elevating yourself above it. You're telling the world that your peace cannot be purchased with petty arguments or prideful victories. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this truth: ego feeds on drama, attention, and reaction. Don't give it any of that. Let them speak. Let them shout. Let them try to prove their point. And when they're done, your silence will stand taller than their noise. Because your silence isn't emptiness. It's confidence. It's knowing that you don't need to prove your worth through words. In the end, the one who stays silent doesn't lose. They win in the most profound way by keeping their peace, their dignity, and their strength intact. Ego will always look for fuel. Don't give it yours. Let silence be your answer, and watch how quickly the fire fades. Your peace is more powerful than their pride. It sounds simple, but when you truly understand and live by this truth, Your life changes completely. Every day we meet people who are loud, arrogant, and full of ego, people who always want to be right, who can't stand being corrected, who take offense at everything. Their pride controls them. But peace, on the other hand, is a quiet, steady strength. It doesn't need to prove, it doesn't need to shout, it simply exists. When you learn to protect your peace, instead of fighting every battle, you begin to realize that peace is not a passive state. It's a superpower. In daily life, pride creates storms, but peace calms them. Think about a heated argument between two people. One wants to win, the other wants to understand. Pride says, I must have the last word. Peace says, I don't need to prove myself. The person who chooses peace may seem quiet in that moment, but they are actually the strongest in the room because peace takes self-control. It takes maturity to walk away from the noise and guard your inner calm like a treasure. Let's take an everyday example. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off dangerously in traffic. Instantly, anger rises. Your pride says, how dare they? You feel the urge to honk loudly, maybe even shout at them. But then something inside you whispers, what will this change? Will it make me happier? You take a breath, let them go, and continue your drive. You didn't let their pride provoke your peace. That small decision, that one moment of restraint, is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because you just chose your peace over your pride. Peace is a decision you make again and again, every single day. Someone might talk rudely to you at work. A friend might ignore you. A relative might gossip about you. Your pride will always whisper, show them who you are. Don't let them get away with it. But your peace says, I don't need to fight for my worth. I know who I am. The moment you listen to that inner voice of peace, you rise above the situation. You stop letting others control your emotions. You take back your power. There's a story about a wise monk who was walking with his disciple through a marketplace. Suddenly, a man came running toward the monk, shouting insults and calling him names. The monk stood still, silent and peaceful. The disciple grew angry and said, Master, why don't you say something? He's humiliating you. The monk smiled and replied, if someone brings a gift and you don't accept it, who does it belong to? The disciple said, to the giver. The monk nodded and said, so I didn't accept his anger. It remains with him. The monk's peace was far more powerful than the man's pride. His silence didn't make him weak, it made him untouchable. In relationships too, peace is strength. Many couples and families break apart because pride gets in the way of love. One person waits for the other to apologize. No one wants to say, I'm sorry, first, because pride whispers, if you do, you'll look weak. But peace says, if you do, you'll heal. The truth is, the person who values peace more than being right is the one who saves relationships. When you choose peace over pride, you win hearts. Pride builds walls, peace builds bridges. Pride says, I know better. Peace says, I'm ready to listen. Pride wants to control, peace wants to understand. In the long run, peace always wins because pride burns everything it touches. Peace, on the other hand, nurtures everything around it. Relationships, success, health and happiness. In workplaces, you'll see people with inflated egos trying to dominate others. They believe power comes from being feared, but true power doesn't come from control, it comes from calmness. A peaceful leader doesn't shout, they inspire. A peaceful team member doesn't compete to be seen, they cooperate to make everyone better. When you operate from peace, you attract trust. People respect calmness because it shows confidence. Pride demands attention, but peace earns respect. There's another lesson in nature. Look at the ocean. It's calm on the surface most of the time, but beneath that calm lies unimaginable depth and power. It doesn't rise to fight every wave. It embraces them and stays vast, steady, and limitless. That's how peace works in our lives. It gives us depth. It keeps us steady even when waves of pride and conflict hit us. The ocean doesn't lose itself to a storm. It simply waits, when knowing the storm will pass. When you live with peace, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop taking everything personally. You stop letting other people's pride disturb your happiness. You start seeing their anger as a reflection of their pain, not your worth. Because truthfully, proud people are often the most insecure ones. Their loudness is a cover for their emptiness. Your peace threatens their pride because it shows them what real strength looks like. There will always be people who try to pull you into arguments, drama, or competition. Let them. Don't fight. Don't react. Don't lose your calm, because when you keep your peace, their pride crumbles. Pride can't survive where peace exists. Your calmness shows them that you cannot be manipulated, that your emotions are not for sale. That's why peace is so powerful. It's a quiet declaration that you are in control of yourself, no matter what happens around you. Sometimes silence and peace feel like losing. You might feel, I should have said something. I should have defended myself. But the truth is, not everything needs your defense. The right people will see your value without you shouting. The wrong people will misunderstand no matter how much you explain. So why waste your energy proving your worth to those who can't see it? Keep your peace. Walk away if you must. The world will eventually notice that your calm was not weakness. It was wisdom. Remember, pride is loud, but peace is eternal. Pride needs to be seen, peace needs nothing. Pride breaks, but peace builds. Pride fades, but peace stays. When you choose peace over pride, you win in silence, not because others bow to you, but because you rise above them. So, protect your peace fiercely. Don't let anyone's pride disturb your calm. When you stay peaceful in a world full of noise, you become the example others silently wish to follow. Your peace is your power, and that power will always be greater than their pride. Silence is emotional intelligence in action. Many people think emotional intelligence is about saying the right thing at the right time, but often it's about not saying anything at all. Silence, when used wisely, is not avoidance, it's awareness. It's the art of understanding that not every moment needs your voice, not every insult needs your reaction, and not every truth needs to be spoken aloud. There is a deep strength in knowing when to speak and when to simply smile and let life unfold. In our daily lives, we're surrounded by noise, conversations, arguments, debates, endless opinions. The world celebrates loudness. Everyone wants to be heard, to prove, to win. But those who are truly wise know that silence can speak louder than any voice. Because silence is not emptiness, it's emotional maturity wearing calmness as its crown. Imagine you're in a heated discussion at work. A colleague misunderstands your idea and criticizes you in front of others. Your ego instantly flares up. Your mind screams, "Reply, defend yourself, don't let them win." But then you pause. You take a deep breath. You look at them and simply say, "Thank you for your perspective." That short sentence, wrapped in silence, disarms the entire situation. That's emotional intelligence. You didn't suppress your feelings. You mastered them. You didn't let your emotions control your words. You allowed wisdom to control your response. Emotional intelligence is not about being cold or distant. It's about being conscious. It's understanding that your emotions are valid, but not every emotion deserves a stage. Silence helps you process before you express. It gives you space to think clearly when the world around you is chaotic. When someone offends you, silence allows you to ask yourself, "Is this really worth my peace?" More often than not, the answer is no. Think about family arguments. You might have a relative who always tries to prove they're right, who picks fights just to feed their ego. If you argue, you give them what they want, attention and validation. But if you stay calm, listen silently, and choose not to engage, you shift the energy. You stop the emotional cycle. Silence becomes your invisible boundary, protecting your heart from unnecessary chaos. There's a reason why wise people are often quiet. They don't stay silent because they have nothing to say. They stay silent because they understand not every situation deserves their energy. They've learned that reacting immediately is easy, but responding thoughtfully requires strength. That gap between emotion and reaction, that's where silence lives. And that's where emotional intelligence shines. Take the example of a teacher in a classroom. When students start arguing loudly, the teacher doesn't shout over them. She simply stands still and stays silent. Slowly, one by one, the students quiet down. Her silence commands attention without force. That's power, gentle, calm, and composed. That's what emotional intelligence looks like when it wears silence as its robe. In relationships, silence can save you from unnecessary hurt. When emotions run high, words can become weapons. You might say things you don't mean, just to win the moment. But silence gives you space to cool down. It gives love a chance to breathe again. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do in a moment of anger is to say nothing. Because silence says, "I value this relationship more than my need to be right." Later, when emotions settle, your words will carry clarity instead of heat. That's not avoidance. That's understanding. Silence also helps you understand others better. When you listen more than you speak, you begin to notice the things people don't say, their fears, their pain, their insecurities. You start to see beyond their words. That's emotional intelligence, the ability to sense what's hidden between the lines. Sometimes, when someone shouts, what they truly need is not your argument, but your compassion. And silence allows you to see that truth. In this digital age, we're conditioned to react instantly to messages, to comments, to everything. But emotional intelligence whispers, pause. Don't let your fingers type what your heart hasn't understood yet. Because silence before a reaction is maturity. It's the difference between peace and regret. There's a story about a king who was known for his calmness. One day, A man insulted him in front of his court, trying to provoke him. The courtiers were shocked, waiting for the king's anger, but the king smiled and said nothing. Later, one of his ministers asked, "Your Majesty, why did you stay silent?" The king replied, "If a dog barks at the moon, should the moon bark back?" The court laughed, but the lesson was clear. Silence is not ignorance, it's understanding that not every noise deserves an answer. That's what emotional intelligence does. It gives you perspective. It teaches you to see beyond the moment, beyond your ego, beyond your emotions. It teaches you to respond with grace instead of reacting with pride. And silence is its most powerful tool. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you choose peace over chaos, growth over drama, strength over insecurity. You show that you are not controlled by the outside world. You are guided by your inner calm. People who live this way are not easily disturbed. They walk through noise with quiet confidence. They speak less, but their words carry weight. They know that silence is not the absence of expression. It's the highest form of self-control. In a world where everyone wants to be loud, be the one who's calm. When others shout, stay silent. When others react, pause. When others fight for attention, hold your peace. Because silence is not a sign of weakness, it's proof that you've grown beyond the need for constant validation. And someday, people will look at you and wonder, how do they stay so calm when everything around them is chaotic? That's when they'll understand that silence is not empty. It's full of emotional intelligence. It's the power that turns storms into lessons, pain into wisdom, and chaos into clarity. So, let your silence speak for your strength. Let it show the world that you don't need to shout to be powerful. Because silence, when born from understanding, is not just emotional intelligence, it's emotional mastery.